Next up, we look at how you can leverage existing geometry by using isocurves and a few simple tricks. Isocurves, which are part of every surface, can be easily extracted and then used as normal curves for creating more geometry. We're going to go ahead and proceed to make this little panel cover, but note right here in this finished example how it flows perfectly around the contours of this shape. In fact, if I click it and turn on the isocurves, you will see that it is going exactly along both lines, whether they're horizontal or vertical, and those are the U and V direction. Let's zoom down to our workspace here. We've got another helmet without the hatch, and I want to talk about some strategies first. So as a general rule, I recommend keeping all the curves during the creation of your model and never throwing them away. Also, seams can be moved, like this one we're seeing right here. However, in this case, I'm going to leave it and kind of work around it. Every time a problem crops up, we're going to try to solve that seam. In an earlier video, we had a seam that went down the center and was moved to the back. So this could still be moved, but we're going to leave it where it is for now. Also, for these extract isocurve commands, it usually works the best if the surface is a single surface and by itself. And as you can see here, I've selected the helmet and it is detached from the visor and this little recess detail. So being a single surface, that guarantees that the isocurve commands coming up will work perfectly. Also, I've got some construction geometry here. You'll see this little line down on the ground plane. We'll use that just for snapping. Okay, let's start with our first isocurve extraction. We're going to find this on the curve menu. It's located here towards the bottom from objects. And then we select extract isocurve. We'll pick this surface, and right off the bat, it looks like it's picking one direction that can be fairly arbitrary. So we'll just go with it. I would like to snap to some other features. So you'll note I have the quadrant snap on right now and intersection. That'll help me align this to other details. So I'm just come right here to the top of that round circle, and we have an isocurve already extracted, and we can just continue picking more. So I'm going to try one right about there. Right click to accept. So now we have the top and bottom. You'll also notice that these are split on the seam. We'll fix that coming up very shortly. However, we do need to get the isocurves going from the other direction. So let's just right click up here in the command line and just repeat the command. We're going to pick the surface again, and notice it's got the exact same direction. If you do recall, we've got two directions for every surface, so it's a simple matter of just clicking up here on toggle. So we go the opposite direction. Now I'm going to use my construction line to snap, and that's where the intersection will find that. So there's the first one. There's the second one. You can do as many as you like. However, I'm done. I'm just going to right click to exit the command. So there are the four curves I'm interested in, even though they are broken into actually a few extra pieces. Let's continue with some additional editing. I'm going to use the trim command over here. The cutting objects will be the vertical isocurves we just extracted. Now, since they're on the surface, you're going to get this question every time, so just be careful you pick the curve and not the surface. I'm going to right click and I'm going to trim off these two ends here. And again, every time it's going to ask you about the surface or curve. I'm going to right click to finish that. And we're going to do the same thing here on the other side. So I can just actually pick this curve first and then right click to repeat the command. So now we're in the trimming mode. And again, there's a lot of questions here, and it's actually will be quite a bit worse when you have more complicated models. Now I'm done with the trim. You'll notice that vertical line is still selected. We're going to actually get rid of that one and the other. Just shift to select both and hit delete. Let's take a look at the curves we have left. And here's the seam issue. We've got the curve broken into parts on both sides. So that's not a big deal. We can just go ahead and select both sides and hit Control J, or you can go over to the little puzzle icon to join them together. So if I verify by clicking on it again, looks like they're now joined to one piece. I'll do the same thing for the bottom two curves. Select both, holding down Shift. Control J is the shortcut. So those are completed. Now, a really cool technique, and this is a little counterintuitive. Instead of using that straight line, which we already had, I just used it for trimming, but I want to have a nice organic rounded shape here. So the counterintuitive part is we can use a blend for curves that are actually parallel, and it has a really nice result. So let's go to curve, blend curves, and we'll just do the quick curve blend. So we're going to select the two ends, and we get this nice resolution. You will notice it's going inside a bit. We're going to fix that here just in a second. I'm going to right-click to repeat the command and do the same thing over here. Okay, so now we have 4 curves. Let's just go ahead and select these guys. All 4 of them. Shift to add as I go, making sure you pick the curve, not the surface. So there's the 4th one. Let's go ahead and join that together with Control-J as the shortcut. Now to verify it's all closed, which we need for any splitting, you can look over here in the properties, and it does say it's currently closed. Okay, just for fun, let's take a look at what's going on with this blended curve here. You notice it looks like it disappears. Actually, the blend created a new curve with the shortest possible direction between those two parallel curves we talked about. And the result is part is on the inside. Not to worry, we can fix that pretty quickly and easily. Let's go over to the curve menu. We're going to select down here at the bottom from objects. We're going to use the pullback. Remember, this will look at the surface normals and just pull it back the shortest possible distance. By default, you want to set delete input equals yes. We just want the result, not the earlier version. We're just going to select the curve here. I'm going to rotate a bit so you can see a little bit of what's happening. So right-click to accept. We only have that one curve, and then we're going to select the surface. Now, as soon as I right-click, you'll see it jump just a little bit. And we can verify that's on the surface by going inside. So it doesn't look any different front to back, so that is directly on the surface. Let's wrap this up by doing our basic split to get this out of the primary surface here. I'm going to split the object, will be the helmet. Right-click, we'll use the curve right here we've just been working on as the splitting tool. Right-click another time. Let's check what happened with that seam. And sure enough, it broke it into 2 parts as usual. Not to worry, let's go ahead and select both of the sides, those 2 surfaces, hit Control-J one more time. So that's now a single piece. So when we do our final step, which will be either surface or let's just use solid offset, I'm going to select this surface here, which is 1 piece. Right-click, verify the direction. It's a simple toggle to move those arrows in or out. So you only have 2 options. By using the solid menu, it is already pre-selected if you're familiar with the surface offset. The distance is 6. I'll go ahead and just change that from the earlier value of 6 from 4. Right-click to accept. So we've got a nice, clean, hopefully single solid here. And when I click on it, it looks like it worked just fine. As one final test, though, let's just try to put a fillet along that edge and see if there's any problems with that seam. So we go over to solid menu. Under fillet, there's chamfer kind of buried down below. I'll just go ahead and use the default distance of 1. And since we have some broken edges here, I'm guessing, we'll just use the chain edge command. As soon as I click, it zips all the way around with no extra clicking required. I'll right-click to accept. We have a couple previous steps here, so just keep clicking on the right button. And if that goes through, it is complete. It does take a little bit of a while, but there you go. That's a really clean offset surface. The Extract Isocurve is a great technique to generate editable curves that are exactly on a surface. However, don't forget to keep all of your original curves as well. Many beginners delete them as soon as they're done. There is no good reason to do this, so don't do this. If they're in the way, just move any curves to a new layer and turn it off.